Well, hello there. Happy Sunday, friends, lovers. We're so glad that you have joined us. Today is Sunday, March 20th. This is 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir. I'm Robert Nasir. This is my co-host, my partner, the love of my life. I wonder if I should turn that around real quick.
Oh, no, that's okay.
All right. Love of my life, and we are so glad you are here with us. In fact, I'm watching the chat. I'm watching for you all to come in. Best part of this show is when you all join us. Thank you for joining us. March 20th, we got to talk. We got to talk about happiness. We got to talk about borrowing happiness, and we got to talk about building happiness. Why? Because not only is it the infernal equinox, no, wait, that's not right. Not only is it the vernal equinox, the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere, the fall, autumnal equinox in the, down under. We'll mention that too, speaking of hello, Protos. It is the first day of spring, and it is the International Day of Happiness.
Wow.
I know we've all been miserable because we've been waiting for this day when we're allowed to be happy, and now the day is here. It is time. It is the International Day of Happiness. Today is the equinox when the sun sits vertically above the equator, making day and night equal across the planet. Well, if you're within the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer, but bottom line, day, night, equally long, very cool. We've been waiting for this. It means spring is here. Today's officially the first day of spring, Sunday, March 22nd. It is the 79th day of the year with just 286 days. Sounds like a lot, but at one point they're going to run out. Do not assume that you've got all the days you want. Just 286 days left to make this your best year yet. It is the first day of spring. Spring is here in 0 days right now. Christmas in 280 days for those of you who've already started your shopping. Today is a tongue twister. What is up with that?
Wait, how many days until Halloween?
I don't know, but Easter is in 28 days.
Okay.
And we've already started on the Easter candy, so you can see my hat is fitting a little bit tight. No, actually, I'll talk about the hat in a minute.
That's right.
Yes, well, on this date...
I've had a large meal. I need to take my hat off.
That's right. Well, my belt doesn't show on the camera, you see. Let me sit up straight here. We'll be talking about sitting up straight exercises today, too.
There you go.
And on this date, March 20th, 1953, so what does that make that exactly 69 years ago? A number that doesn't belong with this occasion. Nikita Khrushchev begins his rise to power. Nikita Khrushchev. I don't know, the kids are probably too young to know what that is. Soviet government announced that Nikita Khrushchev had been selected as one of the 5 men to be named to the new office of Secretariat of the Communist Party of Soviet Russia. Khrushchev eventually takes over for Joseph Stalin, who had died in 1953, and becomes the next bad guy. The reason why I keep track of this, Joseph Stalin was the worst. You can't, as evil as Khrushchev was, he wasn't the worst. Joseph Stalin was the worst. Worse than Lenin, except at that level of evil, you can't really compare. We've got events going on right now in what used to be Soviet Russia that would almost make you think it can't be any worse now than it was then. It is worth studying that history and being aware, for example, of Nikita Khrushchev's rise to power to understand we've been here before, and in some ways worse. But the point is, we've been here before. Terrible things are happening, and some people feel like it's unprecedented. In some ways it is. Every time something new happens, it's not exactly the same as before, but in some ways we have been here before. Do not let that affect your determination to stand up for what's right. And do not let it bring you down in the sense of, things are worse than they've ever been before. Mm-hmm. The reason we need to talk about happiness on International Happiness Day is precisely to make the point that not only are there things to be happy about, but more of that is in your control than you realize. Now let's leave Khrushchev in the past where he belongs 69 years ago. Happy birthday to Henrik Ibsen, the great Norwegian playwright. I have to admit, the only play I've read is An Enemy of the People, but also the author of Peer Gynt and A Doll's House, and films have been made, plays, obviously. In fact, it's interesting, something I didn't know, but looking it up, According to ShakespeareTheatre.org, Ibsen is the most frequently performed dramatist in the world after William Shakespeare. And A Doll's House was the world's most performed play as of 2006. So, happy birthday to Henrik Ibsen, who, of course, I didn't even know was Norwegian. I should have known that. Yes, born on this date, 1828. Lived to be 78 years old. It's also Carl Reiner's birthday. It's funny because we always jump to Rob Reiner because we're such big fans of This Is Spinal Tap and all of other Rob Reiner's outstanding films. When Harry Met Sally, I won't even go into the list. The Princess Bride. But Carl Reiner was his dad. Great comedian, great films. And it's funny because we know him, at least I know him, given my age, as an older guy, by the time that he directed Steve Martin in The Jerk. But if you find pictures of him when he was young, Carl Reiner was actually a good-looking guy. He was much more attractive than Rob Reiner. So very cool, happy, well, it's the late Carl Reiner. We lost him in 2020, but it is Carl Reiner's birthday. Also, finally, somebody we also lost relatively recently in 2003, the great Fred Rogers. It is happy birthday to Mr. Rogers. Wherever you lie now, you made the world a better place. If you have not already seen the outstanding biography film of Fred Rogers,
yes,
you must see that film.
You should.
And I would say almost as good is now why do I keep getting Rob Reiner's name stuck in my head? Tom Hanks.
Right.
Portraying Fred Rogers in that biopic, and that was a small chapter of his life, but very well done. Both of those films are worth seeing, so we do wish a happy birthday to Fred Rogers. Again, as far as this date, it is Happy International Day of Happiness, but one more.
Oh, yeah. Jeff in the chat on YouTube, he says, official government permission to be happy. Oh, the joy.
To the extent that we are allowed by government regulations and maybe even forced by government mandates to be happy.
I'm sure that International Happiness Day was not created by the government.
No. We can imagine
would never have thought of this.
Imagine what International Day would be created by the government. The only one that comes to mind is April 15th. Yeah, Income Tax Day. So, yes. It's also, we're going to get back to happiness, but it's also National Proposal Day.
I propose.
No. These are wedding proposals.
Oh.
I mean, yes, you could propose anything. You could propose International Happy Day, but no, March 20th, National, I guess this is only the States, National Proposal Day. If you're looking for a sign, this is it. Get ready to get engaged this March 20th because it's National Proposal Day. Whether you are planning a giant flash mob, which of course you should, or a romantic declaration of love over dinner, March 20th is the day we celebrate proposals in all their forms. I've got a link in the show notes, which I will post right after the show, as I always do, to a list of great ways to propose to somebody, which are just fun to read even if you don't have an engagement ring sitting in your pocket and waiting for the right time to spring it. I'm a big fan of marriage. We've done whole shows on marriage. I am, of course, happily. I was about to say passionately, and then I went to go say happily. You see what happens.
Happily.
I am happily married to this happily. You know what it is.
I think you might be haplessly.
It's this.
Yeah,
now, this is
too much caffeine.
You see the Starbucks cup here, right? You've never seen me, I don't think you've ever seen me do a podcast with a Starbucks cup in my hand. But the missus and I snuck out earlier today, went shopping. Not for things we need, just for fun. And we hit the Target. I know a lot of you out there are Target fans. We certainly are. It's America. It's 2022. Everybody's a Target fan. Except people with the... Anyway. Starbucks in the store, picked up Starbucks. I had already had coffee. I don't need more coffee. I'm a little bit wired. Maybe you can tell. I apologize for that, but I am happily married, and I love the idea of National Proposal Day. You know, I traveled a couple weeks ago. Folks who listen to the show regularly know I was out of town. Went to the marriage of my nephew and new niece, and I love marriage. I love the idea of marriage. I know it's 2022 and a lot of people think, oh, marriages don't happen anymore. And yet I get to go to all these marriages. There have been so many. People are still getting married. two good friends of ours just had children last week. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
congratulations, you know who you are.
There are people out there with babies.
They're
Actually
making
generate babies inside their bodies, and then they have them, and they're in the universe.
Yeah, and little secret, in 2022, they know what causes that now.
Yeah.
So I love that. People are still getting it. Anyway, National Proposal Day. But yes, real quick here, because we've got to get back to happiness. What are we listening to this week? And the reason this is important is because it ties in with happiness. We did a podcast, which I actually re-listened to. I told you I'm a total narcissist about this stuff. A podcast episode on YouTube with James Stevens Valliant, the great legal mind and philosophy. I don't think he's a PhD in philosophy, but he's a graduate with a philosophy degree. Anyway, smartest guy in the room, whatever room you happen to be in, if he's there. Assault from the Ivory Tower. Originally an essay and lecture given by Leonard Peikoff. Subtitle is The Professor's War Against America. So this was an essay and a lecture and a speech about the state of education, 1983. And we did a talk about, a discussion about how things were in 1983. We had talked previously about the spirit of the 60s, the philosophical spirit of the 60s, the state of education at that point. Remember, there were campus riots. I mean, people got shot at Kent State for the protests that were going on at the time. Bad juju, but by 1983, things had gotten even worse in the educational establishment. And we know now in 2022 what a mess so many of our universities are. Leonard Peikoff had ended that 1983 lecture saying that he didn't really have any good news after giving a survey of all the bad news for the people who were just going into the colleges, and especially for anybody who wanted to teach, who wanted to become a professor. He ended his lecture with, although I am an atheist, I know no better way to say it. God bless you and God help you. Now, that's not a hopeful way to end a speech. And so when I talked to James, one of the questions I had for him, since, I've taken college classes in philosophy, but I didn't get a degree in it. He had been through more than I have with it, and he knew better than I did. I said, well, do you think things have gotten better or have they gotten worse? And, we acknowledged some ways in which things have gotten worse. But then I said, well, do we have anything more hopeful to offer from our vantage point in 2022? And I asked him, is the growth of private schools like the Van Dam Academy, and school vouchers, and charter schools, and networks of Montessori schools like Guidepost and Higher Ground, and proposed new universities like the University of Austin, the new one with founding fellows including Peter Boghossian and Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Barry Weiss has been talking this up. She's been consulting with them. And mainstream universities with objectivist professors like Tara Smith and C. Bradley Thompson and Gina Gorlin and Gregory Salmieri and Shoshana Milgram. Are these cause for some small amount of optimism? Obviously, it's a leading question. You can tell my answer is yes. I think those are some small cause for optimism. And I think they are also some small cause for happiness. Excuse me. So my topic today is borrowed happiness, built happiness. Or to put it in present tense, borrowing happiness and building happiness. We've talked about happiness before, but my perspective today is a little bit different. And I'm borrowing from one of our previous discussions on Thursday, Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir on the ARC UK channel. Ayn Rand defined happiness as that state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. I take that back. I'm not sure that was a definition or a description. I don't want to get into technical philosophy because somebody, and you know who you are, will correct me on that. But Ayn Rand did say happiness is that state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. And I contrast that with the folk wisdom that says you're not made happy by the things you want, but by the things you have. As Sheryl Crow says, The philosopher Sheryl Crow says, it's not having what you want, it's wanting what you've got.
I'd say it's both.
And the version of that resonates with me, and this I've mentioned before, the one that resonates with me, that kind of sounds right, is what Abraham Lincoln said, except, of course, nobody knows if Abraham Lincoln really said it. Other people say Will Rogers said it. It's on the internet. It may have been pulled out of something somebody else said, to use the vernacular. Most people are just about as happy as they've made up their minds to be. Now that resonates with me because I see it. I've seen that throughout my life. Different people seem to be set in their level of happiness. And no matter what happens, some people I know who are happy people are always happy, no matter what happens. And they can have a sad day, but they've got a certain happiness level. Most people are just about as happy as they've made up their minds to be. And some people who are unhappy, no matter what happens to them, they ain't happy. Now that would seem to contradict the idea that happiness is the state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of one's values. So there were studies about this, and we talked about this, the hedonic treadmill. And these studies where somebody wins the lottery, and they talk about how happy were you before you won the lottery, how happy were you after you won the lottery. And it's not always the lottery, it's other value achievements in their life. And a lot of these people, apparently the majority of these people, self-report, so that's a little skittish. But after a year after winning the lottery, and assuming they haven't lost all the money yet, they're generally about the same level of happiness they were before they won the lottery. If you ain't happy now, you ain't going to be happy then. It's my own personal way of putting that. If you ain't happy now, and this is true in a lot of areas of life. I look at job situations that don't work out, or marriages that don't work out. And sometimes, people need to make a change. You got to change something because things aren't going the way they should be going, and you got to change it. But a lot of people, if they ain't happy now, they ain't going to be happy then either. Anthony Robbins used to say, the problem with leaving a relationship is you take you with you. So if part of the problem was you still got that problem. There are countless ways to be happy in the moment. But the question then becomes, how do you make them enduring? And that's what I want to talk about. Because I have recipes for happiness. We did a whole show called Recipes and Scripts. And there are recipes for happiness in the moment, like, well, try this with me. If you're at home, if you're in the car, and you can do this one anywhere. If you're driving, you might have to tweak it a bit. No matter how happy you are right now, because we're going to talk about a happiness set point. You're going to sit up straight. So you see, I'm kind of slouchy, so I'm going to sit up straight. Those of you who are listening to this on a podcast afterward, just follow the words. You don't have to see. There ain't much to see anyway. Sit up straight. Okay. Put your head back. Square with your shoulders. Raise your head just a little bit, but not much. What you really want to do is open your eyes a little wider. Put a smile on your face. Now look up. Don't move your head. Look up a little. Smile on your face, looking up just a little, sitting up straight. Now relax your shoulders just a bit, so it's not feeling artificial. Are you feeling your state change? You can do this, and if you're standing up, you can stand up straighter. And you can adopt a stance, a happiness stance, that stance that puts you, usually it's a stance for action, like you're ready to spring forward, you're ready to jump on some exciting thing. You can do modeling in this. You can imagine the reason that you're doing this is because 3 hours from now, you're going to get on an airplane and you're going to be flying to Hawaii, and you've got a vacation coming up, and everything else going on around you, you've got it all handled. And you've got a taxi or an Uber or a friend coming to drive you to the airport. He's going to be here in 5 minutes. You're all packed. It's all ready. It's all good. You can do this. You can model this. All you need to do is remember being in that state. Okay. Number 2, way to be happy, put on music. And music that makes you happy. Not music that makes you excited, not that angry music that gets you all riled up at the gym to work out, but just that music that puts you in that state of ecstasy, of pleasure, of joy, that you want to dance, or more than you want to dance, you want to frolic. Or here's another one, eat a cake. It's the craziest thing. It's the problem with being an adult, because when you're a kid, when you're like 5 years old, 10 years old, maybe even 15 years old, and you think, once I grow up, I can go to a bakery, I can go to a grocery store, I can buy a cake anytime I want. I will have the kind of money, cakes aren't even that expensive. I can buy a cake every day and take it home and eat it. And here's the crazy thing. Nobody stops you. It turns out you actually can do that once you're an adult. Do you think there ought to be a law? What is up with that? You could call a friend. You can take your partner or your kids or yourself out on a date, and that will change your state. In fact, we published in our show notes, this is great because it came from Good Housekeeping of all places, a list of 100 date night ideas. Mm-hmm. And most of those ideas turn out to be fun things that you can do, not just with a date, but with family, with friends, with yourself. Take yourself out on a date. My point is, in any given moment, you can change your state. You can change your general level of happiness. And I recommend it. You should have a resource like this. You should have a list of 100 things you could do in any given moment to give yourself that state. But the risk, and Amy and I talked about this earlier, and we've talked about it on the show. The risk is happiness is that state of consciousness which proceeds from the achievement of your values. And these short-term values, they are values. They're of value to you. They help make life worth living. But they're short-term. And not just short-term in time, but they're short context, small context. They're not broad context values. We talked about you can reframe by redefining words. A big one a few years back was people would say, don't talk about having problems. Anytime you encounter the word problem, replace it with the word challenge. I don't have problems, I have challenges. Oh, I've got a challenge with my car today. It has a flat tire. Because people are excited about meeting a challenge, whereas problems, kind of deflate you like a flat tire. The trouble is, it doesn't work unless you really turn your problems into challenges. If you can really reframe it so that you're kind of excited when you have a problem, because then you get to meet it and prove your mettle, prove yourself. Okay, but eventually over time, replacing one word with another gives that new word all the weight of the old word. And when somebody says, hey, Joe, I've got a challenge for you, it feels like problem. And that's the risk of too many good ways to make yourself happy in the moment.
Yeah, one of the things that makes me happy, or I wrote a whole list here, but I went ahead and I put the first one is allowing myself to lower my self-expectations when I'm not feeling happy. It's what I call reeling it in.
Yes. Reminds me when we talked about resetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every party we throw has got to be better than the last party. Every anniversary has got to be bigger than the last anniversary.
Yeah. You don't want to cultivate a psychology of being false or thinking to yourself that you have to exhibit some kind of emotion when, you are in front of other people or for the sake of other people or just, that you think that you should do it. You have to, you can't reverse cause and effect in that way.
Yes. Yep. Yes, you must not do that. So now I'm curious, what else is on your list of happiness-making items? Because I'm especially curious to see which ones we can categorize as medium and short-term. And
there is a particular clue that Amish Adalja gave us when he was talking about his life and his career as an epidemiologist.
That was the interview we did with him on Thursdays?
Yes, that was the Life on Earth show on the Ayn Rand Center UK channel. You can look that up. It's a great interview. It's not very little bit about COVID, not much, but mainly about his life and what his values are. And it was really lovely. It was a great talk. One of the things I was really most impressed about with him was his his introspectiveness and conscientiousness about what makes him happy. And one of the things I found very, very surprising, because he was talking about being a doctor and especially being an epidemiologist in terms of understanding viral outbreaks and what causes them. And so he said, I really enjoy the mental process of being a detective, delving into deductive reasoning and trying to figure out what's going to happen next based on the knowledge that I have. And that is, so he said this, he said, and trying to determine what he wanted to do with his life, because I think both of his parents were doctors, doctors. And he does work as a doctor, and, like a clinician kind of thing. He has office hours and he sees patients, but he most loves the mental process, where he's at mentally, where he's at intellectually, the kind of mental process that he goes through when he's trying to be a detective. He likes being in that space. That whole idea of, you are, in your headspace all of your life when you're awake. And, it needs to be a pleasant place to be. And you need to be engaged with activities that are going to give you that satisfaction of exercising your mental capacity in the way that you want to exercise it with the content that you enjoy. So it's funny. I had a conversation with a friend of mine whose son is an adult, and he's having a hard time trying to figure out. He's a young adult, trying to figure out what he wants to do in life. And so I told her that story. That the question is where do you want your head to be at? How do you want your head to operate? How do you want your mind to operate? You're going to be spending so many hours in this particular career. Where are you going to be happy the most? In what mental process are you going to be happy the most? So that really gave me a clue. And I had known this, in a lot of different ways, but I never really fully integrated it that way with that perspective. And so thank you, Amish Adalja, if you're watching. But I have a whole list of things, like 50 things that I wrote the words, I find happiness in ... And then I put things like, I find happiness in doing a variety of things throughout the day. If I'm just, beating, on my keyboard and trying to knock things out, and I'm under a tight deadline and I don't get up to cook, I don't get up to clean, I don't get up to, walk around the block, I'm just not happy.
Now, I should explain that Amy works a 9 to 5, but she works at home.
Yes.
And that means sitting at a computer working remotely from 9 to 5.
Right. And it's not even so much that I'm working from home anymore. It's just that I need to be more conscientious about putting variety in my day. If I can just, shut off the computer for just 10 minutes and do some dishes or whatever it is, or do some organizing. It just feels good that I'm actually engaged in reality. I can't be in my head and in my computer all day long. So, but I really love, I find happiness in working really hard and accomplishing something new and creative. It's a big thing, big thing. Here's one, and Robert, you and I will talk about this later. This is what I have discovered as a big value in my life, and this is very strange. Let me know if you all can relate to this or not, or you think I'm just a schlub. But I find happiness in falling asleep and then waking up, having had a good dream, and then falling asleep again. I really love the process of falling asleep. I just love it. I love it. It's like I'm going to my own little fairyland, and it's just wonderful. I feel so cozy, and it's great. Anyway, So if anybody could relate, let me know in the chat, please, because I hope I'm not the only one. Of course, anticipating something fun like a vacation and planning for it, which we're doing right now with regard to, we're going to London next week. That's going to be fantastic. But yeah, basically engaging in mental processes that I find most enjoyable. And, whether that's, integrating abstract philosophical ideas and then finding concretes to try to validate them and doing that whole spiral theory of knowledge thing and the dancing between concretes and abstractions and all that good stuff. Making jewelry. I love making jewelry. It's a hobby that I've had since I was 15. I could go on.
I have to add that, in the context of specific and concrete values, in the short term, and going to London, I actually am going to be wearing this hat because I found this hat. Can you believe it?
It's amazing.
I've gotten so used to wearing this hat on this show that I had to track one down just like it. Little things, little things. Little things like the Bunny Cafe. Put a link in the show notes. There's actually a cafe, a coffee shop, where half of the coffee shop is rabbits. Literally, bunnies. It's a bunny cafe. And what it is it's a bunch of bunnies running loose, and this is managed more than the way I'm making it sound. And you go there, you get a cup of coffee, and you drink your coffee, and then you go hang out with these rabbits. It's the craziest thing. They were originally going to open when COVID broke out. And what they did is they opened the bunny part of it even before they were allowed to open the cafe. This is in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Link is in the show notes. This is the cutest thing. And there's a gal who is big in the bunny community. As house pets, we like bunnies. And she's a bunny person. She goes to this cafe and she interviews the people running the cafe and talks to some of the people coming to the cafe to meet the bunnies or to meet her, because I guess she's famous in bunny circles.
She's famous in bunny land.
Check that out. The point is very cute. And there's a life's purpose right there. Incidentally, I missed the first part of the chat. Since you were talking, I got to catch up a little bit. John, see, I tell people, if you listen to the podcast later, and most people do, but if you listen later, you might miss out because there's video. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook Live. We're on all the platforms, which is sad because on some of the platforms it says, yeah, you got 12 views. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to add them all up because not that many people are listening to us on Libsyn's website. Anyway, if you're watching the video, you catch things which apparently I didn't catch, but love of my life, as I was saying, I'm one of my top values. It's proposal day, the love of my life. John says, then he turns and looks at her just to make sure she's who she says he is. Apparently it wasn't clear who the love of my life was, or maybe it wasn't clear who the love of your life was. I don't know. Maybe I need to read that one again. I love the chat. It's just, there's so much good stuff in there. It's a challenge to keep up with it.
Yeah, if anybody didn't catch it, Robert, I don't think you revealed my name. My name is Amy Nasir.
Oh, I thought you said your name.
No.
I often have you introduce yourself. You often say your own name. Yeah,
you were just so enamored of
myself,
of the love of your life. That,
yes, myself.
You didn't know.
No, you. Yes. Petya incidentally mentions there's a place similar to the Bunny Cafe with cats, and all I can say about that is chew. And my sad allergies. Cats really are cute, and I have nothing against cats other than the fact that they make me miserable. But yes, they are incredibly cute. And the reason why I like laying out a list, again, of things that make us happy is because you should have that list. You should have a list of those things. And I always say it's not enough to carry that list in your head. Write them out. That's why I love that list of 100 date ideas, because that one's easy. You just print it out and you've got it. Whereas if you carry that in your head, you read that list of 100 date ideas and you say, oh, I like that one about picking a museum that we haven't gone to yet. Don't pick your favorite museum. You've been there before. Find a museum that you can go to that you haven't been to yet. Make it an exploring kind of thing. Or the silly ones, like go to a fast food restaurant you both kind of like. And only order from the dollar menu, but order a whole bunch of things and just make it real silly. Just whatever the date ideas that stuck with you, you could stick them in your head. Oh yeah, I read that thing. I remember a couple of them that I liked. But no, put it on paper, print it out, and put it somewhere where you can refer to it. Everything is better on paper. Somebody recently recommended that I need to read the bullet journal book. I do keep a journal. I keep paper. I do my scheduling on paper, not electronically. Get it out of your head. Computer's okay, that's external, so you can do that, but I like it on paper. There's no substitute, though. You have this list of 1,000 ways to make yourself happy in the moment. There's no substitute for achieving your values, and that's the real message. We did that show on hedonic adaptation, the hedonic treadmill. The idea, again, that most people have a happiness set point. And the hedonic treadmill is you do stuff that makes you really happy, you get a raise, or you get a new car, or you get a new house, and you're really happy, and a year later, you're not really much happier than you were before. They call that regression to the mean, returning to the average.
So we have a comment here by our friend on YouTube. He says, lens focus is a bit off, your camera is going to sleep. Does that mean? Let me know if the lens or the image of our camera and our broadcast is not coming through properly.
Could be. That's happened once or twice before, but I don't know a solution to it other than we may need to reconsider microphone placement, because it's possible that as we move around, the camera is fixating on Big Blue here, the Bluebird. The condenser microphone that is our main microphone. We have a second one on Amy's side because we know you want to hear her voice even better, so you get more of her dulcet tones. But that may be a thing that is happening. I don't have a short-term fix for that other than maybe I just need to stop gesticulating so wildly, or maybe I need to do this more so that the camera will say, oh yeah, he's what we should be, the electronics, whatever, should be focusing on. Or maybe it's a vicious and evasive camera because it's out of focus. You philosophy students will know what I'm talking about. Incidentally, I haven't seen the name Stingy Student in the YouTube chat in a while. It's very cool to see you have returned. Thank you for that.
Yeah. So in the meantime, I just want to say, I know we usually say this at the end, but I'd like to say it twice per episode. If anybody would like to consider supporting us, we do need your support. We run this all by ourselves. We do not have any sugar daddies or sugar mamas. It's just us.
Well, y'all are sugar daddy. Y'all that sugar mama.
You can be our sugar parents if you'd like to go ahead and go on Patreon or give us a one-time donation on PayPal. You can see those links there at robertnasir.com. If you'd like to go ahead and support us, we'd really love it. We really appreciate all the support that we've gotten so far. Of course, we're looking to get bigger, bolder, stronger, and faster, like the $6 million man. So we are looking for about $6 million.
Well, we do have a remote electrical engineer on the staff who says, in regard to that focus issue, it's just a bit off. No, it's not fixated on the mic. Nothing in the view is sharp. Huh. And then he says, it's dichotomatized.
Oh.
Well, damn. I have no explanation for why we would be more fuzzy than usual. I don't really see it on either of my monitors.
Yeah.
And the monitors I'm using are actually going out to the internet and then coming back to the studios.
Yes, so I think that we're looking all right.
It might be a little off.
Maybe it's the Vaseline lens we put on today so that we're extra pretty.
Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up. I don't know. Yeah, Mario says the video looks good after changing the resolution. Oh, well, if you're watching in a browser, try restoring your window and then maximizing it again, or whatever would change that for you. I don't know.
Yes.
I have no idea, but we will take a look at it. Obviously not right now, but in between now and the next show.
He says it's just that you are warm and fuzzy.
Well, I am warm and fuzzy. And that's why I have to watch out for things like happiness set points and settling in and getting used to things and not being willing to take the long-term perspective and actually achieve values and change things. Because that's what happens is people find they get back to that happiness set point. They find themselves falling flat onto the hedonic treadmill again because they didn't change anything. They didn't achieve anything. They didn't attain their values other than these external values. More money is great. And it's easier to be happy with more money than it is to be with less money. I've been in both places, so I know how that goes. But there is no substitute for actually achieving your values.
It's true. Binge watching Netflix is not a substitute for achieving your values. Eating cheese balls is not a substitute for achieving your values in health and longevity. There are these 100 ways you can make yourself happy in the moment, and you can get better at it, and you can get more efficient at changing your state, but you can't escape the need to live up to your own highest values. And believe me, I've tried. Trust me, I've been there and I've been back. You cannot escape the need to live up to your own highest values and your own moral code. And man, I wish there was, but it turns out if you want to live well, you have to live well. It's the craziest thing. If you want to live a life where you experience your values, you actually have to achieve your values. Oh, man.
Yeah, there's no way around that. That it's true that most people are just about as happy as they've made up their mind to be, but that's because most people are good people, but they achieve a certain level of good and a certain amount of value in their lives, and they never change it. And if they're happy, I certainly have no criticism of that. But some of us want a little more. Some of us want that state of consciousness that proceeds from the achievement of one's values and one's highest values. So for your happiness to be enduring, for you to jump off of the hedonic treadmill, don't twist your ankle, for your happiness to be enduring, it needs to be based on facts.
Yes.
Facts which are enduring, actual values attained by the exercise of your virtues. That's
Yes.
why I say your moral code. You have to live up to your own moral code. And for that, winning the lottery isn't going to cut it. Again, I've tried all the shortcuts. The ones that don't involve any evasion, they do work in the short term. But there is no substitute for living up to your own highest values. You can get better at it, you can get more efficient at it, but you can't escape that need.
Yeah, so please share in the comments what your values are, what makes you happy, what, if you have a list, make a short list of 3 things that you go to that might just put a pep in your step, that might cheer you up. Yeah,
we shared a lot of these. When I say short term, I don't mean short term out of context, but just, values that have power, but only in the moment. More of those are better, because you need that ability to change your state.
Right. Or a reminder.
So we would love
to
to know.
Yeah.
Yeah. What works for you?
Sometimes I feel very efficacious in introspecting, and I just I like to I really feel a sense of achievement when I'm in a down mood, for instance, or I'm in some mood, or maybe an ambivalent or a mixed one that's really, really wild, and I think, okay, how did I get here? What kind of experiences, ideas, thoughts, occurrences put me here in this particular state, this emotional state, or this mix of emotional states? What's behind the curtain of these emotions? And it really makes me feel very happy to be able to introspect and untangle all of that and say, this is what it is. This is the experience or the idea that's matching this emotion, and now I can think about this a little bit deeper, and there's a feeling of efficaciousness about that I just find very satisfying, and so just by doing that will help being reality focused, and it's great. It's wonderful. So
in the chat, a stingy student seems to have taken all of these concepts and put them in the I think he put them in the ninja blender that you use to make smoothies. He says, is it gaining a value if you crack the algorithm for the lotto and win it with certainty? I would have to figure out what that means first. Yes.
Let's see. Another thing I love to do, or I just find happiness in it, if it's my friend's birthday or Robert's birthday, somebody who I like's birthday, I love buying a card and gifts for them and then putting it and making a real special kind of wrapping for it. Either with wrapping paper and or with a bag and tissue paper and or with little surprises in the tissue paper or something entirely different. Or, I think for Robert's birthday, I did all sorts of interesting things for the first probably 15 years we were together, and I just kind of ran out of ideas. But one time instead of boxes, I would put his gifts in what they were like utility boxes, plastic with lids, the smaller ones. And then instead of ribbon, I used industrial wire to make a ribbon on the boxes, and it was just the funnest. So anyway, I love that. I helped you.
So if Amy's hosting one of your birthday parties, you may want to have a set of diagonal cutters on hand.
Yes. But just funny, it doesn't have to be that. It could be anything, but, what do you call it? Pipe cleaners, those crafty things, so fun. Oh, what do we have, some fun comments?
Oh, sorry. Our electrical engineer says, winning a lotto with certainty? I will have to ask my married bachelor friend about that.
Married bachelor friend.
And there was a bit of a kerfluffle apparently because the corrector was arguing with Marius, and he does say the corrector values correcting people and being loved for it. We usually love it. We almost always love it. And if we bristle against it, it's probably just a sign that we really, really needed that particular correction. Of course, the art goddess Linda Cordair is here and says happiness,
Yay.
Success, and love. Not necessarily in that order. So
Cordair.com, Cordair.com.
She knows all about happiness and all about love. And yes, if you doubt me on that, go to Cordair.com and realize that's the world she lives in. So
I really love finding the confidence and the courage, because sometimes they have to do that, to compliment other people, or just to realize that that I need to be outward focused. Because honestly, it's hard.
Never comes naturally. We have to remind ourselves to do it.
We do.
You would think if you pay, we did a whole episode called compliments. You should listen to it. You would think if you do that, you do a whole, spend 5 minutes talking about compliments and then spend the next week giving compliments. And Amy on the social networks was just all over people, giving out the love. And then a week later, you're like, okay, I'm a little better at it now, but I feel like I still have to work on it. Some things never quite come naturally.
Have to work on it because we're both, Robert and I are kind of
total
introverts, and it's really hard to, it doesn't come naturally to say, hey, Amy, you need to look outwardly into the world at other people and then find things to compliment them on. And, sometimes that can happen naturally, but it's something that I have, that I'm constantly having to put effort towards, which is fine.
I use my introvert tricks. Things like, I think I mentioned this one recently, if you have a conversation if you're an introvert, if you're like me, like totally shy and like, oh my gosh. If you have a conversation with somebody, make sure by the time you're done with that conversation, you can walk away knowing what color their eyes were. What do you mean what color their eyes were? Well, in order to know what color somebody's eyes are, you have to look them in the eye. Introverts aren't good at that. Even when, they look someone in the eye, they're a little out of focus. They're trying not to feel too sucked into the conversation, like, oh my gosh, this is so intimate. And, normal people don't do that. But if you are one of us, what I'm talking about.
And speaking of being introverted, there have been moments where people actually contact me through like Facebook Messenger or by email or whatever, and it just sits there, and then it sits there, and it sits there, and a week later I'm like, I have this ball of stress sitting on my chest, thinking to myself, I haven't gotten back to them. And then, and it becomes bigger and bigger and bigger, and it becomes more and more immense, like a big monolith, and I'm like, I don't know how to tackle this.
Well, and you don't want to get back to them until you have time to really explain why you didn't answer them right away. and time to do it right.
And then I twist my mind into all sorts of situations where I'm like, should I or shouldn't I say sorry at first?
Yeah. And even if you're not shy, that just completely blows the GTD paradigm, getting things done. You don't want those open loops.
So definitely one of the best things that I find happiness in is getting back to late correspondence and knocking it out. It's doing it. It's
like the pendulum hanging over your head. It's pitting the pendulum, slowly coming down a little more until you answer that email.
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, and I just
Oh, these guys are really going at it about cracking the algorithm to the lotto, and I mean, at this point, Stingy's like, "Do you need to crack the algorithm of my comment?"
Yeah, so we have some nice comments on Facebook. Narendra has a whole bunch of sleeping, socializing, dancing, singing, and I did get some votes about sleeping, or specifically the process of falling into sleep.
Sleeping is the strangest thing. It seems like such a waste of time, and yet
I know.
At the same time, it's like one of the best things in the world. How is that even a thing? How is that possible? It's so weird.
Yes. Yeah, Linda has happiness, success, and love, not necessarily in that order. The corrector. Robert already said this, but I got to say this again. The corrector values correcting people and being loved for it. I find great satisfaction in correcting other people and like having them being grateful. It's great. It's wonderful. Yes. And then Jim, he reminds us that values are to be achieved on earth in this world, in this life, no matter how hard the struggle to achieve them may be. That actually reminds me of the, I think it was My 30 Years with Ayn Rand. I think when Leonard Peikoff was talking about his conversation with Ayn Rand, and she turned to him and she said,
"Don't ever give up what you want most in life. The struggle is worth it."
Yeah. And the context was quite heartfelt. Yep. All that good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what? You sit down and make yourself a list of, start with the words, I find happiness in ... and then put in some verbs, put in some nouns, put in some indirect clauses, whatever you want.
And I'll tell you, once you document, I'm telling you, it sounds crazy to write it down, but once you document this stuff, it does have enormous power. It can help get you back on the rails when you've gone off the rails. Like if winter seems like it was really long and you feel like you got a little lazy toward the end of it. Not that I know anybody intimately who ran into that challenge this year. But when we did our episode Recipes and Scripts, we talked about, well, what is your script for happiness? What is your recipe for happiness? What's your recipe for worry? The great thing about knowing your recipes for things like uncertainty, what your script is, you can get an idea of this from reading James Clear's Atomic Habits, is by knowing that there's a script or a recipe for doubt, you can actually make sure you don't run that script and that you choose a different script or a different recipe. What was the example that we gave during that? I have to look that up now because I vaguely remember that it was really, really good.
Well, you look that up and I can tell people a little bit more about the things that make me happy. I love driving, and then, I'm driving and all of a sudden, you're on a ramp or something of a freeway, and then this beautiful, glorious sunset opens up to you. For all that you can see is this beautiful sunset. So, I love looking at the different moods and colors and textures of the sky. Is so great. And that goes along with water. Like, you've got a lake in front of you, you got the ocean in front of you, you hear water, you see a waterfall, you see even rain, in certain contexts.
Smell the rain.
Smell the rain. It's so good.
I remember now the one of the recipes that I gave an example of. This is useful. This is valuable. I have a recipe. A lot of you probably have the same cookbook. I have a recipe for disappointment. If you ever want to feel disappointment and feel it really good, it's a really good recipe. It's a very simple recipe. Anytime you want to feel disappointment, here's the recipe. All you need to do is mix this up. Put in your mixing bowl. You need to decide how things need to be in every detail for you to be satisfied with the outcome of an event. Every detail. You need to decide in advance for me to be satisfied with this project, this event, this social situation, this manuscript I'm writing, whatever it is. Decide in advance exactly how this party needs to go, exactly how this concert needs to go for you to be satisfied. Decide each element in detail and in advance, and that is a recipe. And it works every single time it's tried. That is your recipe for disappointment. Now you might think, why would I want a recipe for disappointment? Why would I want to know in that much detail what causes that particular failure, that failure mode? And the answer is so that you know not to cook that recipe. Now you also need recipes for good things. So my recipe for calm, I have a recipe for calm. Mm-hmm. What I do is I empty the mixing bowl. Empty out that mixing bowl, which is my mind. And it doesn't have to be that clean. Just empty it out pretty good. It doesn't have to be totally empty. And what you do is you add in some self-gratitude. Just stick it in the bowl. Things you are grateful to yourself for. Even if it's something as simple as, I got out of bed this morning and I didn't go back. Or I went back to bed, but I eventually got up. And I did finally get up and wash my face or brush my teeth or eat my breakfast or not kill the dog or whatever the thing is. Add your self-gratitude. Number 3, slow, focused breathing. It's one of those weird ones because to me it always sounds very woo. And then you do it and you're like, oh crap, this actually works. And it does. So add some slow, focused breathing. Number 4, and I mentioned this earlier, add some music. And it's music that gives you that calm feeling. And calm doesn't necessarily mean slow orchestral music, although it might for you. For me, it could be rock music, but something like The Rain Song by Led Zeppelin. Number 5, add a positive thought. And this could be picked at random because all you're doing is a little bit of consciousness state change. You're going from feelings to thinking. Number 6, shoulders back, eyes open, sit up straight, and then don't slouch, don't go back where you were, but relax. So you come down a little bit, don't feel any strain, still sitting upright, eyes open, focused. And finally, write down one small thing you will do to carry positivity forward from this moment of calm. Works every time. Works every time I try it. I don't even need all 8 of those ingredients to make that recipe cook up a big, heaping, warm, tasty bit of calm. Recipes and Scripts, look it up. It's an episode that we did. The link is in the show notes. You don't even have to look it up. You can just click on it. Yeah, and again, to get back to my main point, you can do all of these things, and you should do all of these things. They're not going to add up to a change in your happiness set point unless you're also living your values, achieving your values, practicing the virtues that you believe in. For most of the audience of this show, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because there's only 7 virtues. No, there's much more than 7 virtues, but there are 7 main virtues that we talk about. Rationality, independence, honesty, integrity, productiveness, justice. Did I say independence?
Maybe.
I did say independence. And see,
pride?
Pride. I should you gotta put the hand up and count them. Rationality, honesty and integrity, independence, pride, justice. What did I leave out? Did I say productiveness? I didn't say productiveness.
No, you didn't.
Productiveness.
Productiveness.
There we go.
Yes.
Which, in a way, is almost like the obvious one, because even somebody who's not especially philosophical, the measure of a man is, did he produce more than he consumed? Did he give more than he got? And that is productiveness. So,
yeah.
With all that said, I did want to talk about happiness, because you can borrow happiness. In other words, you can get happiness in the moment through any of these things that we listed. And if you're really living a life of values, they're not borrowed. They're real. They have substance. They're not like calling your problems challenges. But that sense of calling your problems challenges, in other words, getting through the short term in order to get the long term, that's what I mean by borrowing. You can borrow happiness, but only to the extent that you're also building happiness. And building happiness means long-term, practice your virtues, achieve your values. We'll talk more about that on future episodes because we're going to revisit how to be an impassioned valuer. We're going to integrate that schemata, that method of Andrew Bernstein's with Tal Safani's happiness teams, which we'll be engaging with in London.
Yeah.
And he'll be working with Gina Gorlin on self-authoring, self-creating. She's bringing a lot of that out of the Montessori framework. And we'll be reviewing books that have already been written, like Tara Smith's Viable Values, and new books that are coming up, which we mentioned, for example, talking to Don Watkins in the Self-Made Manifesto. You've got Alex Epstein's Human Flourishing Project. What we need to do is integrate as much of this as we can, find the common denominators, and talk more about it. And then do it, because that's where the good stuff comes from. This week's homework. My homework for this week is just go big or go home. Because I haven't been going that big. I've been waking up slow in the morning, and my morning routines have been inconsistent, and I'm still, getting out of winter. And today is the first day of spring. So if you, like me, found the winter comfortable, join me in going big or going home. Well, we're all home. Half of us can't even go out to work because they still want us to work from home. Go big or go home. Go big or stay. Just go big. Forget the home part. Go big. So I actually have 4 parts of what I'm doing this week. You decide what you want to do. But I'm going to, number 1, I'm going to exercise my free will. I'm going to focus. I had a long conversation on, it wasn't even Facebook, it was on Twitter about free will. What is free will? I was talking to a determinist of the Sam Harris School, and we had an interesting conversation. It's on Twitter. Find me on there. You can talk about it. I am going to exercise my free will. I am going to focus. That relates to my Post-it note of the week. We'll get back to that. Number 2, I am going to listen to my March 2022 Optimism playlist. What is the March 2022 Optimism playlist, you ask? I'm glad you asked that question. If you go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Robert Nasir, you will see there's a new playlist there, and it says March 2022 Optimism playlist. And it is 7 or 8 different discussions about optimism and reasons to be optimistic right now. I've said before, I'll say it again because it's true. There has never been a better time to be alive. We've never had it better in life. We've never had access not just to better technology, which is the easy part, but all the elements, lifespan and standard of living. And I won't even go into all the details about how we are safer, there's less crime, we have things we've never had before. So that's number 2. Listen to that playlist, the March 2022 Optimism playlist. Number 3, I'm going to tweak my morning and evening routines, get back on track with that, get up earlier in the morning. And number 4, I'm going to get back on my bike, because I haven't ridden my bike as much this year, and I need to get back on that because that is where my passion lies. And it's strange, I don't feel it right now. I don't want to ride the bike, and yet I know this. Once I get on the bike, I love it. So I need to turn that around, figure out that one. So my Post-it note for the week, in the context of exercise my free will and focus and tweak my morning evening routines. My Post-it note for the week, I may have used this one once before, but I need it real bad right now. My Post-it note of the week, this will be on my bathroom mirror. Everybody's like, just tell us what the damn thing is. Says, wake up twice. This will be on my bathroom mirror for the next week. Maybe I'll take it with me to London and put it on whatever mirror we end up with there too. Wake up twice. You wake up in the morning, and whether you get right into a morning routine or you have that first cup of coffee or you check your computer, your socials, your email, you're not really as awake as you're going to be in an hour or 2 hours or when you really dig into work for the day. But you could in that moment, you could wake up again. Whatever that level of consciousness changes from being groggy in bed and deciding to get up and open your eyes and do those first few things. And that higher level, you could do that again. We do that in the same way that we find that happiness, the same state change, the same stand up straight, shoulders back, head back, eyes a little wider open. Listen a little bit harder. What do you mean listen harder? Really listen to what's going on around you. Hear the sound of the air moving in the room. Hear the sound of your breath. Open your eyes in a way where you actually see the colors around you. You mix in a bit of that sensation feeling with that perception that's going on all the time. Same thing with what you smell, the same thing with whatever you're tasting, whatever you're drinking in the morning, and then the tactile sensations. Feel your bedclothes, or if you've already gotten dressed. Point is, wake up again. A little more aware, a little more mindful, a little more present, a little more engaged, energetic there. That is what I'm going to be doing. That's why my post-it note for the week says wake up twice, because that's what I need to do. This is a habit I was in the past, and I swear over this winter it's kind of gotten comfortable. So that is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to stand up, metaphorically speaking. Thank you for joining us. We went a little long today. I didn't have much to say today. You know, there's a few ways that you can make yourself happy, but you need to be focused on the long term too. You've got to integrate those two. Otherwise, it doesn't last, and you get back, oh, that'll only take me 5 minutes. So thanks for sticking around. I can tell by the chat some of you are still there. Not everybody has nodded off to sleep. Very much appreciated.
Although sleep is such a value.
Sleep, as Amy says, sleep is such a... And she's right.
So
she's
good.
absolutely right about that. As always, show notes, links to all the interesting things we talked about, and even the downer stuff like Nikita Khrushchev, but all of the things that we talked about, some kind of link will be in there. Also, there will be a link to that new playlist, the 2022 March Optimism playlist. Worth a listen if you're the kind of person who will put on a playlist and leave that running as you do your work, or your housework, or any kind of work, or your lawn mowing, which we're finally getting into that first day of spring. Happy first day of spring. All of that will be posted in the show notes within 10 minutes after the end of the show. That playlist is a gift to you. If you have any comments, questions, or ideally suggestions for future episodes of 5 Minutes with Robert Nasir, with Amy Nasir, put them in our Facebook group or in the chat here. Facebook group, there's a link to that at robertnasir.com. If you go to robertnasir.com, there's also a link to our Patreon and PayPal pages. If you would like to support the show, love you. Those of you who already do, I will love you. Those of you who are about to click that button, thank you for that. And as always, well, I tell you what, next week's schedule could be a little bit off, because I'm leaving on a jet plane. I think I already sang that song. So we will be in the air.
Yep.
We may not be here at 6 o'clock on Sunday.
Yeah, no, we may not. We'll let you know. But probably, I don't know, well, it's up in the air.
But one way or another, we will be in touch. You will hear from us next week, and we will be back on our regular Sunday schedule after London. So thank you. Thank you for joining us. Very much appreciated. As always, we wish you, and you know who you are. I'm talking to you, that one person listening right now. We wish you success. We wish you happiness. We wish you the kind of flourishing that makes you say, I am living right. And as always, we wish you love.